it's the idea about the relationship between authority and people and the church and the mosque and the poor people and all of this, and I think it's all based on this idea of manipulation. So that's when it came the idea of the marionettes. The first film was only half an hour, and it tells the history of the Crusades that starts from 1095 with the speech by Pope Urban II to launch the first Crusades. And he made this speech in Clermont, France, to ask Europeans to go free Jerusalem from the Muslim Turks. The beginning was just to have an existing historical antique European marionettes. And from this point, from the second film, I decided to make my marionettes. And it had to be connected to the topic of the second film and the historical period also. The beginning when already the Crusaders are settled in Jerusalem, and now you start to see the relationship between the Muslim leaders with each other, because they are trying to protect themselves while the Crusaders are already settled. And also I think it was important to use something like the ceramic in the second film, Path to Cairo. I was producing the second film in South France, in Oban, which is really close to Clermont, where the first Crusades was happening there. And when I went there, I decided to work with local craftsmen inside Oban, and I found that the most interesting about this city that they are making santons, and santons is very small figures made out of ceramic, and it's basically it's religious figures. And I found it's really, really also interesting to try to make marionettes out of their technique. The third film deals, as I said, with the historical period from 1146 until 1204. I called it The Secrets of Karbala, because Karbala refers to a very specific battle happened only 50 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. And from this very small battle, there was a split happened in the Islamic world. So from this moment, they became Sunnah and Shia. So I start the film with this battle, although it's really before the Crusades history. And I finish the film with the attack that happened, as I said before, from the Catholic Church on the Orthodox Church. It's not really about Christians and Muslims, but it's more economical. The idea of using glass marionettes in this, the last film, came actually from something completely different. It came from, I was reading a long time ago, a novel by José Saramago, The Gospel According to Jesus Christ. And I remember part of this novel where Jesus Christ is speaking to God and asking God why we are not made out of light, because we are breakable. Why our minds and our souls are present in a very fragile body. And I think from this question, I decided to make the fragility is even higher. So it does not become even only ceramic, but it becomes even glass. So in this film is the only film the Venetians are involved in. So I decided to make it from Venetian glass. So for me, the idea about using the history of the Crusades, but from the Arab point of view, it means that the history depends on who is writing it. It doesn't mean that we know the facts. Another thing is that it's clearly that this 200 years happened over maybe 1,000 years ago, but it still has the effect until now in the Arab world. Even now, when something like 9/11 happened, it's like a call back to the idea of the Crusades. So it was also important to have these mirrors in the exhibitions, and I found it like a new way of communicating with the viewer, to look at himself in the mirror and at the same time to see this imaginary map of Damascus, or imaginary map of Aleppo. And also the second film has the same idea. It was really mixed between human beings and animal. And actually we see this also with the aeroplane now, that it's exhibited in the last floor, that it has this hybridity between an animal, camel-like, and an aeroplane. And I find that this is something really happening in, most of my drawings has the same idea, and most of the films. It has to do with the idea of storytelling, and the idea of an animal telling a story. So it does not become only a moral story. Well, I work with tarmac and asphalt for a long time now. It's been over 15 or 16 years. It was always for me a metaphor for the oil industry. The idea of oil and the developed society, that it's based on the money that it's coming from oil, the idea of nomadism and the modernity that it's coming from America basically during this time. And all of this is always connected to me with the idea of using tarmac and asphalt in my work. It's like, for me, it's like a metaphor for the concept of nomadism again. And the trip for me, that it happened from the Crusaders during these 200 years, it's really surreal, because it had this form of nomadism, although it came from Europe. And for me, it's really interesting, this mix. It has this idea of even the idea of fragility, and even the lines, that it's not straight, that has this sense of the pencil line, actually. So I see it this way. I see it as a drawing in the space, basically. So if it's about this fragility, I still see it as a drawing, but it became like in the air, and that's all.